With a heart so pure, she steps in the game, teaching the rules, she's igniting the flame. Ethics and play, she's setting the tone, bringing together those once all alone. In every connection, she sees what we lack. Rise up, take your place, it's your time to shine. In the dance of love, everything's by design. With the mentor by your side, the fears fade away. Arlene's wisdom lights the night, paving your way.
Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
All right. Well, I'm excited to have someone that I just fell in love with over this November on the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, PK Creedon. I have to tell you, and I know we've already had this conversation, but I have to share with the world. You came on, we met at the Matchmaker conference in Mexico, and you did a talk, and everybody was like, oh my God, that was so good.
You're going to make me blush.
No, seriously, you're such a great storyteller and presenter and speaker. And one of the things that really sticks out, because, you know, I'm a grandma, is that you had your grandmother in one of the photos. And actually, the other guy who was there around your age group also had his grandmother. That makes me feel so good. I'm like, my grandson's going to be like so into me. He's going to have me on a presentation. But anyway, the content was outstanding. And you as a speaker are amazing. How do you do it?
I mean, well, one, thank you for the elaborate introduction. It doesn't feel deserved, but I'll take it. And one thing that you'll love is I actually surprised my grandma and had her come out to LA to go see Wicked because we saw Wicked together when I was in 7th grade. She took me to my first musical. So I'm just spending my life spoiling her the way that she spoiled me when I was young.
I love that.
But I just love I haven't really been on the speaking circuit. I've worked in advertising and sales for like 12 years, and then on the side I've kind of built a social following that's been a nice just separate revenue stream and a fun side hustle that just turned into somewhat of a main hustle now. And I just love meeting people and building relationships and sharing a little bit of my expertise, because I think that social media is so powerful, and I get giddy and passionate and excited when I talk about it. And I just love sharing that with others, because I think no matter the business, no matter who you are, matchmaker or not, everyone can benefit from just the power of social media in every way, from building community to generating and converting sales to everything in between. So it's just a huge passion for me. And that's why I just get excited to talk about it.
Well, we have lots to talk about, because obviously anybody who has a business right now needs to be on social media. And there's the usual things that I even talk about in the trainings that I provide, which is being consistent and putting good content out there, which, you know, of course, I even slip on that. Like, it's just a lot. How do you even keep up with all the algorithm changes, or is this something not to worry about? Like, what advice would you give matchmakers, or any kind of entrepreneur for that matter, about, you know, the social media algorithm and how to keep up with everything and what to focus on? Because it's so much.
Well, first I'll say no one has it figured out, so you're in good company, because I think it can be overwhelming, and you're going to have imposter syndrome, and you're going to feel like everyone else gets it and you don't. And that's just not the case. Everyone's faking it. Anyone who says that they've figured out or hacked the algorithm is lying. There's best practices and stuff that I'm sure we'll dive into during this conversation, but it is hard. So instead of focusing on keeping up with the algorithm, it needs to be rooted in just passion and excitement to share what you're going to share. If you're not excited about what you're sharing, no one else is going to care about it either. So I think instead of going into the intention of like, let me make this a science and let me figure out the algorithm in order for my post to do well, you need to put the art and the science together. And without the art, there is no social media. And the excitement and passion and expression that comes from focusing on the art and and your area of what you're sharing is going to be what resonates with other people. So I think we can talk about the nitty-gritty scientific side, but if you don't have the passion for what you're doing, then no one else is going to care about it either. So I think that focusing on the art is the first step.
First of all, whoever's listening should know that you are a heavy hitter in the social media space because you've worked for some big companies. So what you're saying, not only do I agree, I just experienced that. I had a post on LinkedIn that I guess went viral, for LinkedIn anyway. And there was a lot of passion in that post because I was at a networking event and they were talking about LinkedIn. Now I'm an early adopter. I'm very techie. I got on LinkedIn when they first launched. Nobody even knew what the hell it was. And it was my Rolodex back in the day.
I
But,
love that.
right. But, they were having a conversation about LinkedIn as a marketing tool. And then we did a breakout, and this woman says to me, well, if you're in the matchmaking space, maybe you should be posting on Facebook and not on LinkedIn. And I just obviously didn't react to her, but then later on put this rant on LinkedIn and everybody chimed in because I was so pissed off. This is the business of love, this is a business. It's not just, and the people who are going through the training are really smart people who have high level educations, including Harvard degrees and stuff. So, for you to talk to me with the condescension, which is the one thing I cannot tolerate in life.
I mean,
But
I love that you focus on LinkedIn because I'm a huge believer in LinkedIn, and the fact that you posted something that was so passionate and went viral is exactly what social media is for, because it's relatable. Then when people see something, they're like, "Oh, girl, me too," and they're gonna share it and send it to their friends, and they're all gonna feel that exact same way. And that's what gets me giddy about social media, is because you're just building a community at the end of the day.
And where do you think the matchmakers should live? Because I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, but I'm not a matchmaker. I train and teach matchmaking. I know a lot of matchmakers are on TikTok or Instagram. So what's your opinion on that? Does it really matter where they are?
Yeah, I would say it's overwhelming, because you just named three out of the honestly 30 that you could choose from. Those are the primary ones. When we look at what's going to do well, it's do well in what way? Are you trying to generate sales? Then maybe not TikTok, because on TikTok they don't even show a lot of your content to your followers. They only show it based on the content. Whereas Instagram has a knack for kind of a hybrid approach. It'll show it to the people that follow you, and it'll show it to the people that consume similar content. So for building a community and getting really close with a subset of followers, I always opt for Instagram. I think Instagram should be the primary channel always, and not just for building a community and building awareness, but Instagram is the one that's going to convert. When you think about using different features or tactics within Instagram, right? You have like posting in feed, which is just regular posts. Then you have reels, which is all the video content. And then you'll have avenues like stories. And stories is so powerful when it comes to actually building an authentic relationship with your audience, because you're going behind the scenes. It's like knock knock, like MTV Cribs. Like they're coming in the door and they're seeing the real deal. They're not being swooned by the facade that like the in-feed profile or a TikTok profile might look like. You're diving in deeper to get to know that person. So stories is actually where you see higher conversions, because people actually believe the things that you're saying there. You're talking more one-to-one, you're talking to the camera, whereas a lot of the stuff posted on other avenues are more scripted content or rehearsed content, or just overly edited, and it doesn't feel as genuine. And with stories, you have the option to link out to different websites. You can link to a class that you're selling. You can link to Amazon, where you have affiliate links where you can make money off of that. So the power of Instagram is truly unmatched. Obviously, the uncertainty of TikTok, or rather recent certainty, I could say,
Mm-hmm.
it draws more problems. And a lot of those creators are jumping to Instagram and then YouTube. I would say YouTube is where a lot of creators are going, because that's where long form content really originated. And TikTok has really grown with all of the long form content that people have been posting. So they're just kind of syndicating that to YouTube now. I'll pause there, but I do think that Facebook is important. But I'm curious, where do you find yourself gravitating towards between these
Well,
different platforms?
I'm really happy with what you shared because it really was enlightening for me. I don't go to TikTok at all. Very rarely I go there. I'm usually on YouTube, LinkedIn these days. Facebook, I've just sort of phased out of, but I do kind of post there here and there. I maxed out my contacts in there, and I'm trying to now grow my page, but it's hooked up to my Instagram. But Instagram is so frustrating. I can't. I feel like I can't get enough followers in there, so I just kind of give up on it. And I've had it forever. I live on LinkedIn right now. That's like my favorite spot to be in, and I like the content there. I like just the serious, not seriousness, but yes, kind of the seriousness of it. But
And
now,
girl, that's where the money is too. Those people got
mhm,
money on LinkedIn. They're ready to convert. They're ready to engage. They're ready to buy. There's a built-in avenue for you there.
yeah. But I am going to go back to Instagram after everything that you said because I didn't even know that about stories. And Instagram is constantly changing. So it's very interesting to know that you can actually put links.
Yeah, in the stories. And again, I don't want to undermine LinkedIn either because I
Mhm.
know I joked about it being a profitable avenue, but it really is. Like LinkedIn creators, brands are willing to pay for them because of who their audience is. Naturally,
Mhm.
if you have an audience on LinkedIn, you're going to have a different type of audience than you will on Instagram. And that different type of audience on LinkedIn comes with deeper pockets sometimes. So brands are willing to pay a premium to work with different creators or influencers on LinkedIn more than they would spend on a TikTok creator, because on TikTok it's kind of a dime a dozen. It's really easy and it's like the lowest bidder wins. So whoever's the cheapest might get that brand deal. Whereas LinkedIn, it's a more sophisticated audience, which comes with a higher price tag when brands are working with them. So I think LinkedIn is definitely an avenue that everyone should consider. I know I personally get annoyed with the overly like corporate posts on there. I think you have to bring some humanization, some energy into your post. Otherwise, people are just going to do the boilerplate engage, like, this is a great concept. Thanks, Arlene. And it just doesn't, like, to me, I just roll my eyes when I see that stuff. It needs to be like you said, the post that went viral, I think is a great example of something that was passionately written and relatable rather than something that people are just posting to post. That would be another recommendation is if you are posting something just to get something up, why even post it? It just takes away from it, and it won't do well either. And then your audience is going to kind of roll their eyes at you. So you need to really embody that authenticity, even on LinkedIn, even though it's a more professional avenue.
And it makes perfect sense because the whole idea of social media is to be social. And I think often us business owners, I would say myself included, that we forget that this is not just about selling or telling people what to do or how to do it. And one of the things that really pisses me off about LinkedIn in particular is the constant barrage of people reaching out to me on, messages telling me how they're going to improve my website. First of all, I have multiple websites, or they're going to do this. So right off the bat, you're insulting me. You're telling me you're going to fix something that's wrong with me. You don't even know who I am. You don't know what I do. And it's obvious in the message. And it's like, in the dating world, it's sort of like meeting someone and saying, "Hi, can we have sex?" It's like, don't jump in so quickly. Like, give me a second here. Like, buy me a drink.
I know. And they don't even bother to personalize it too. Like
No.
it's like, dear reader, like, okay, really? Like you're not even gonna use my name, it's on my profile. You don't have to be on National Treasure to find my name?
Well, you know what's interesting? I recently started posting. I always like to talk to the daters, even though I'm not a matchmaker anymore. I'm always talking to daters, and we have a referral network where the daters can go and potentially meet someone who's working with a matchmaker. So, my ongoing conversation with them is a newsletter on LinkedIn. But what I didn't realize at the time was I was posting these articles, but they weren't connected to my newsletter. And then I realized, oh, I have to create a newsletter, and it's a function of LinkedIn, and then create the articles within it. Well, let me tell you something. I did that I don't know, 3 days ago, even though I've put a lot of articles out there, I already have like 700 people who subscribe to it. I gotta
Yep,
find
and
it.
that's the way to do it. What they reward you for using endemic features. So the same way, if you were to link out to an article on X, it may not do as well, but if you actually create the content within X, it's going to do a lot better. The algorithm pushes that type of content out there. If you do a link on LinkedIn or a newsletter on LinkedIn, you're going to find much more traction with using the native feature rather than just trying to throw spaghetti at a wall and see what catches. So I think that that's genius, and it'll send people forget about this until they get one in their inbox. When
Mm.
you're trying to do a newsletter, you can send it out to people to manually opt in. It'll show up with like add a friend, and you can subscribe.
Mm.
So it's a really easy way to get people. It's like a low barrier to entry. You can send out those notifications. Sometimes people might think they're adding you as a friend when they're subscribing to your newsletter, but that's part of that's they can always unsubscribe if they want to. But I think that those features are really powerful because it is hard to grow, to your earlier point, like about Instagram. On Instagram, being honest, you're only going to grow if you're posting video content. And a lot of people may not be
Mm.
comfortable with video content. So I think when you're trying to assess which platform, don't just take my word when I say Instagram should be your primary. If you are not comfortable with video content, then I would say LinkedIn should be your primary. So you should assess the medium that you're most comfortable with, that gets you excited. If it's writing blog posts, if it's writing newsletters, if it's shooting short form content, if it's long form content. And then from there, you want to plug that in to the channel that's going to be most apropos for that type of content.
Let's share a little bit about your background because it's very impressive, and people should really take your advice, but know that it's coming from someone who knows what they're talking about.
You can't
Because
see me,
you
but I'm red right now. If you're not looking at the video, I'm red.
you're so modest, but you're so amazing. And I was even listening to a YouTube video how you were valedictorian and you were the captain of like you're just an overachiever on anything that you do. How
I
you
think we have
doing?
that in common, though. I think we have that in common. And mine comes from trauma, if I'm being honest. I'm only that way because of being in the closet and not being myself for so long. So I said what I said.
I love that. I love that. But yeah, let's talk a little bit of your journey into this whole area of social media marketing and sales. What were the different experiences that kind of took you into that?
I know. I feel like I need to say long story long because I was going to say long story
Yeah,
short, but this
go
isn't a
for it.
short story. So we'll dive in. I would say there's two different avenues. There's one, which is the social media side of the quote unquote influencer creator side. And then one is the business professional side. So on the creator side, this is actually a funny story. I don't know if you knew this. So I graduated college and I got cast on The Real World. I don't know if we ever talked about that.
No,
I
you're
made
so
it all the way
interesting.
like to the final rounds. Like they flew me out to LA. I was totally being like typecasted, so it was like between me and one other person. And I was told that I got accepted, and then I was told that I got dropped right before they started filming, and I couldn't figure out why. And come to find out, it was because it was like skeletons from your closet, and apparently they found a skeleton in mine, and that skeleton dropped. So they weren't bringing that skeleton on the show, so I wasn't able to be the show. I say that because I turned down job offers because I thought, hey, I'm committed. I'm doing the real world. I'm doing this. I'm doing the damn thing, right? And I went from being on what felt like top of the world at the time to moving back in with my parents after college. And I needed shoulder surgery. So I got shoulder surgery. And I just was doing some freelance work, but I was like, wow, this is just not where I saw myself after college. So I started documenting my road to recovery of my shoulder surgery for friends and family to watch only. And I did it on YouTube just because that was the medium that people were posting on at the time. But I was sharing links to Facebook. And it just started growing, and random people who weren't my family and friends started watching it. And ultimately, that's kind of actually how I met my husband, which is another side story. But that just kind of started growing. And then when I brought my now husband on the channel, it started growing more, and we kind of carved out this more like LGBTQ healthy relationship family dynamic. We're lucky to have supportive families, and it just kind of took off from there. So that was the social media side. And then on the professional side, yeah, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, please keep going. I'm fascinated because every time I talk to you, I learn more and more amazing things about you.
Well, ditto. But on the professional side, I had studied like international business, marketing, economics, etc., and I knew I wanted to go into marketing. And the freelance work that I was doing was more in the public relations side. So at that time, it was, God, like 12, 15 years ago, it was all earned media, right? It was very PR focused. But then fast forward a year or two later, it started to be pay for play. That's when, Google was coming out with ads, and then Facebook came out with ads. And from there, it just kind of took off. And I saw an opportunity within the paid social space to really double down and be an expert in that. And it started when Facebook launched their Facebook Pixel. And if you don't know what that means, that's totally fine, but it's what allows you to track conversions and sales, etc. And I moved out to LA, moved in with my now husband after only dating for 2 months, long distance, again, another story. Uh, and, and I took a job at an agency. And at that agency, we kind of built the paid social practice from scratch. And that kind of carved me into that larger digital marketing space. And from there, I worked at a couple different agencies, between Dentsu Aegis Network. It's a bigger holding company within that world. And then I jumped at Snapchat, where I was for the last 4-ish years. And it's always been within that kind of sales, social media, advertising side. And I love both of them. And I think now is the time where I'm kind of bridging both of those two separate worlds together, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah. How are you doing that? How are you bridging them?
Yeah, I think it's tough even with the conference that I spoke at. I was lucky enough, like you said at the beginning, to speak at the Matchmakers conference last year, and it was authentically me, the online version of me, bringing a lot of that organic expertise that I learned from my personal side hustle rather than my professional background. But it's also tying in the paid media aspect and the relationships that I have on that side. So I think that was the first time where I really put the two together in a way that it sounds like it resonated well. So I'll take it. Thanks for the positive
Yeah.
vibes.
I mean, I think you can teach people about speaking. I mean, the content was great, but I was very, very impressed in how engaging you were and how you delivered the talk. That could be a very boring topic for many people, except for me, because I'm a total geek when it comes to technology and marketing and sales and all that. But you delivered it in such a way that made it very interesting, and you were funny and personable, and that's not easy to do, especially in that setting. Because let me tell you, matchmakers, they're a tough crowd.
Girl, I got some backhanded compliments. Like I didn't expect you to do as well. I was like, okay, thanks, girl.
What the hell? That's
No,
crazy.
they meant it with love. They were just very impressed, and they were sharing their appreciation. But within that, I think I'm kind of having a realization as we're talking is, you're talking about bringing an engaging speech to an audience that needs that in order to be bought in. And I think that that's where that personal background of social media allowed me to excel professionally and in an environment like that conference, because I went in thinking, not what do they need to know, it's what are they going to laugh at? What are they going to resonate with? What are they going to get excited about? And then, of course, I can sprinkle in some of the knowledge bombs within that. But I do think it's important that when you go into any professional setting, you still have that mindset of, how can I make this as engaging as possible? And if you go into it wanting people to be engaged and you take the time to sprinkle in humor and personal stories and really jot that down and be intentional with what you're going to deliver, rather than, again, just that science aspect like we talked about at the beginning, you're going to get positive responses. And one of my favorite things on the professional side is leading team meetings, yes, but also client meetings and pitches and going in, because everyone loves a good story and everyone loves to be engaged. They're back-to-back meetings. They don't want to sit through another presentation of the same old thing that doesn't add a little bit of flair. So I think if you can challenge yourself to think, how can I get this done in a more creative way that would get me leaning in forward on the edge of my seat, I think you're going to find that it's relatively similar to the same mindset that you need to have when you're going to post something on social media. What is going to get people to really lean in and really engage?
I think that's very true, and I think what often happens, because I see it for myself, even like I'll sit down and I'm like, okay, I want to lay out, what I'm going to post this month or whatever. How do you like even think that way? Like, what kind of brainstorm, like what tools can we or guidance can we give people to say, hey, sit down and do 1, 2, and 3, and that's where it's going to be? Like, I don't know, because I just find it, maybe it's just me, but I no, it's not, because a lot of my students find it to be like a drudgery. But then at the same time, if you're a business and they go to your socials and they don't see any activity there, they feel like, what, did this person go out of business? So it's no longer, like the old days, buying commercials on TV, pay to play with Google ads and stuff like that. In fact, Google ads, to some degree, are somewhat passe, because everybody knows that that's an ad. So you're not going to click there. You're going to go a little further down. But with social, it's such a necessary thing. It's like, if you're a business and you're not on social, you're not in business. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll talk about Google super quick because you bring up a good point. Not only do people know that the first couple ones are ads and it could alienate them or have them roll their eyes and just scroll right past, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also the real estate that's now being taken up by the AI responses when you're searching, especially on a desktop. So although there's a ton of value, and I still recommend people build out blog posts and capitalize on SEO, it's more for search purposes. There is still the downside of like paid ads when it comes to Google. So with social, removing the paid ad element, because we don't need to talk about that. That's a whole nother box we can open maybe later in another session. But
Mm-hmm.
when you're thinking about organically posting, you need to have a keep the lights on, like you said, because the last thing you want is someone to go into your profile and then they think, well, wait, this doesn't look clean up. This doesn't look like there's any strategy involved. So how can they trust you as a matchmaker to have a strategy or a game plan and find success for them if you're not showing up that way on social media? Again, it doesn't need to be every platform. Maybe on Instagram, you're saying, in your bio, it's follow me on LinkedIn. So they know, okay, that's the primary presence. You can drive traffic from there. You use like a link tree, which can link out to multiple different websites. And you can tell people to follow you on LinkedIn for more XYZ content. Even that is a keep the lights on approach. And maybe your Instagram profile is all text and photo based. That's okay. Not everyone's going to be the next Oscar winning short form video creator, and they don't need to be, but you do need to still have that presence. It could be quotes from your clients, testimonials, quotes from yourself, your method of how you approach it. And those could be in carousel forms that people can just swipe through and read. So they're getting some value add, but you're still driving them to your primary platform. So even if you're not going to lean into Instagram on video and you don't care about growing an audience, you should drive them to that one platform that you are doubling down on, that is your primary medium.
That's such good information. Recently, I'm getting a lot of people reaching out about YouTube and telling me, look, you have all this great content and there's no SEO, which I know because I've always used YouTube as like a video storage. Like,
Yeah.
I never even cared about the description because I was using the storage to then have it pop into something else. So now what I'm going to do is get rid of I have 2 channels, and I'm going to take down all that content and move it to one channel that will be treated differently with SEO and everything else. Um, what are your thoughts about YouTube, especially for people in this industry? Because a lot of matchmakers do give daters advice, and I mean that's just like a constant thing, right? They're always giving advice. I think it's a great place for that, YouTube, because people go there to find out how to do or what to do, and it's a big search engine, right?
Yeah, I mean, the how-to search on YouTube is what they're known for. How to do X, you're going to go to YouTube to find the answer to that question. I
Mm-hmm.
will say, this is just a side note, but when it comes to creating any of that content, any dating advice, don't just sit down and stare at the camera and sit. You should be doing something. Maybe you're making coffee, maybe you're putting on makeup, or maybe you're going for a walk outside. It just also needs that visual hook more than just the verbal hook. So whatever type of content you're doing, don't sit down in front of a ring light and just do nothing and just stare at the camera and talk, because that can make people feel uncomfortable and it makes them maybe scroll past your content. Whereas if you get something that's more of a visual hook, they're going to stick around a lot longer. And it doesn't need to be anything fancy. Like I said, it could be making dinner. It could be anything small that you're doing, but little actions make people feel like it's a more casual environment rather than like they're watching a work webinar. Because the last thing people want to do after being at work and maybe watching work type webinars is to go home in their free time and watch something that remotely resembles what they were just doing during their day. So when it comes to YouTube, I would say two different parts jump out to me. One is it is great for long form video, even if you are sitting down and talking and maybe doing a type of action while you're explaining dating advice or talking through the matchmaking world, answering different questions about the industry, etc. Long form video is great for that. And YouTube actually now they'll cut their videos to they'll provide recommendations of like at this part in the video they talk about this. So to have very clear moments within your long form video style, because AI will be used to determine, okay, skip to 3-minute mark if you're focused on this. And that pulls into the Google search rankings too. So that's one way when you're going for long form video, make sure that you have clear structure within all aspects of the video. And then with YouTube, the beauty of it is they've doubled down on shorts. Their short form video content, which very original to call it shorts, but their shorts do a great job of driving to long form video too. They have tools you can use to take a long form video and then pull out different short form content that they think might do well on the channel. And that could just be just a clip, just a taste, to quote Sabrina Carpenter, just a taste of something that you might want that gets them to actually visit your channel. So there are ways to grow from the long video form standpoint on YouTube, but also don't underestimate the short form video, especially with people leaving TikTok and looking for other alternatives. YouTube Shorts is a huge avenue that's really doubling down on promoting smaller to medium-sized creators too, because they're trying to get as many people over from TikTok as possible. So they're rewarding you to come over and really build out a presence on YouTube Shorts.
That is such great. Oh my gosh, such good content. Like everything you said really clicked. And now I'm going to just start walking around in my closet.
You could be folding laundry. I've seen it. I've done that too sometimes. Like I'll be on a live and I'll just start folding laundry because it's just a more casual environment. Like if I'm not FaceTiming my mom and grandma while I'm folding laundry, I'm talking to followers.
That's amazing. I sit in a huge closet here. It's like a big bonus room over top of a 3-car garage. And I'm always just in this one spot. And I keep thinking, well, I just need to have a one spot where I can do all my stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Like I'd rather be walking around and doing something. I just have to get better at recording with my phone because I tend to do everything on my computer. But I'm gonna have to like embrace the smartphone and just start doing that. Um,
You actually just brought up a really a fun thought too, which is if you can put yourself in a more casual environment, even if someone listening is maybe uncomfortable recording themselves or sharing advice via video, etc., if you put yourself in an environment where you're kind of being productive and you're more comfortable, you're going to be more authentic and it's going to come across that way to your audience too. So you sitting at a desk might not be comfortable for you. So you're going to maybe overthink something or question if you're not being X or Y. But if you're in a safe space, and you're just bringing the video into that safe space, it allows it to be much more authentic.
that is so good. And you know that, so I love that. I really hope that people are taking notes when they listen to this because there's so many gems that you're dropping. What do you see as a trend? I heard you mention AI, but what's the trend that you see for the future of, social media? Where are things starting to go?
Um, there are like some, I would say, more niche trends or smaller scale trends, and then like the larger macro trends in the industry. I would say one macro trend is definitely like AI content creation, but it's more for creating content and editing content. You don't necessarily want to rely on AI to create the content for you, right? It's just not
Mhm.
going to do as well, and it'll be flagged in the algorithm. It has to be dictated that it was AI, etc. So AI is a trend, but it's still more for efficiency or research. I always say like use AI to research. I know I think it was in the Mark Manson book about the F word, the subtle art of not giving an F, I think is the name of it. You
Right.
know, he talked about like it's inspiration, it's action, and it is action, inspiration, and motivation. And the easiest way to get inspiration is to take action. So I like to think of AI, of let AI be the initial action, the initial step. Maybe you're typing in a question, maybe you're doing it for research. That's the action, and then let that generate the inspiration, and then the motivation will come from there. So I think that that's like a powerful way to look at the macro way of how you can kind of integrate AI. Another larger one, I would say, we're seeing another shift towards long form video, which seems counterintuitive, but I think people just got too familiar and too bored with the short form content, and they're wanting more from the creators that they follow. So they want behind the scenes like stories or Snapchat where people are posting 100 snaps a day, and they want longer form video on YouTube because they want to hear more from that person. They don't just want to maybe engage with the short form content. So I think we'll continue to see that shift. I know when TikTok launched, I think it was 15 seconds, then it went to 30, then it was 60, and then it was 10 minutes of content. And now I think it's unlimited potentially for certain creators. You can do like hour-long movies, and that's outside of live as well. Live is so popular for the same reason. There's this huge shift to wanting more, and that normally comes in the form of long-form content and then lives, which I think live is another macro trend that's super popular when it comes to shopping. A micro one, though, like a very small one, is people are shying away from what historically would maybe help them in the algorithm. So everyone says like use trending audio, use like a trending sound when you're posting content because it'll help the algorithm push that. And it still does. But there's this like rebellion that's happening where people don't want the algorithm to dictate what they should or shouldn't do. And as a result, there's a video I just saw this morning, and it's Italy without a trending audio. And it's the most beautiful video because you're hearing all the different aspects of each individual video clip without the trending song or sound behind it. So it comes across as more real and authentic and less produced. It seems like someone just doing quick snaps. And I think the rebellion against the algorithm is another macro type trend. And that's just a small example of what people are doing where they're like, I don't want to be told I have to use a trending sound. Let me take this in a different direction. And creators are getting creative to kind of forge their own path. Because if everyone's doing a trending audio, guess what? It's no longer going to benefit. So now they're going back to not using a trending audio because it could actually help them break through the clutter that historically it didn't allow them to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never kind of followed that trend of the songs and stuff. Maybe once or twice, but unless I really liked it. What are your thoughts about podcasting? Because I love a podcast. I mean, when there's nothing on TV, I put my Spotify on TV, and one of my favorite podcasts is The Diary of a CEO. And I just, because now Spotify does the video and the audio, and I'll just watch that for like hours. I'll just be on there listening to podcasts. And I guess it sort of falls under a little bit under social media. Would you say that?
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. And even brand deals sometimes lump podcast budgets into their creator influencer social budgets as well. So I definitely think it falls within that larger ecosystem, especially because I don't know of personally, like I don't know of one podcast that I listen to that doesn't have a video element. So by default, then it's naturally going to be posted on social media and it falls within that social budget. With podcasting, if I'm listening to everyone on TikTok, to quote them, we don't need another white guy with the podcast. That's just a direct quote from a TikTok that I saw yesterday. There is this animosity, I think, towards people that start podcasts that don't necessarily have a niche or a lane. They are just picking up a mic and going in thinking, oh, I think my opinion and my stance on everything is so important, so I'm just going to go that route and see who listens. And then they're so surprised to find out no one's listening, or they're listening because they're laughing at them, not with them. So I think if you're going to go into a podcast, and this rings true for any social channel, if you're going to go into it, you need to be more niche and more specific and separate yourself from the noise that exists within the podcast space. Because I know a lot of my close friends have podcasts. Some are extremely successful and others are not. And normally the ones that are not are just kind of them sitting on the couch chatting. And there's really no reason that someone would go out of their way to listen to them every day because they're not bringing a type of value add. Maybe the value add is just entertainment. And if you are a comedian level comic, then yeah, maybe you can talk about anything because you're hilarious and people are going to just like the way that you see things and the commentary that you provide. But 9 out of 10 people that start podcasts go in thinking that people are going to listen just because they have thoughts that they think they need to share, to find out that people want them to keep those thoughts to themselves.
Oh my gosh. So many good things that you're sharing here. Like, what advice would you give matchmakers specifically on, building a community online and, like, what should they be posting, that kind of thing, specifically for matchmakers? Because there's so many things, and a lot of people are doing the same thing, and it just is so boring. Um, yeah, what advice would you give them?
I mean, I feel this about any industry.
Hmm.
Go to your friends that are less familiar with the industry and ask them what they would want to know about your job. I think that is the best way to leverage, and you don't have to pay a market researcher to do it for you. You can just use your own existing communities that aren't online to better understand what they think could break through. Because if everyone's doing the same thing, there needs to be an avenue that you carve out that isn't identical. Sure, there's going to be overlap in some of the content, but there needs to be some research done as to what's working and what's not. I think that's where typing in a question and going to Google and then clicking down on all the questions that come up underneath. You know how when you type in, it'll give you like 5 other question recommendations. Go through all of those just to get familiar with what other people are asking, because what Google does is it'll tell you like the top 30 questions that's related to your question that people are asking. So I think that's another way to do good research. I think people, again, like in your own inner circles, just floating ideas by them to think what would resonate with them. If you ask someone in your industry, they're going to be inherently biased, and it's going to go back to the same old things. So I think thinking outside the box of with matchmaking, there needs to be some type. I think a great example, not for matchmakers, but just a great example of something that people probably didn't think would take off, and it did. There's the show where they just bring people up on stage and they blindfold them and they like live date within the crowd. It's the
Hmm.
random type of content like that. And sure, like now that's more produced and that's kind of taken over and that goes viral every time it's posted. But there's just different ways that people might relate to your industry that you're not familiar with. I think the problem that people have, including myself, if in the social industry, is I think I know what they would want to know, and that's not the case. So you're gonna ask people that will tell you within the matchmaker community, if you ask them what they think is the most important thing to focus on, and again, it's going to be biased and it's not going to do as well. You need to go after the average person that would use matchmaking or contract with a matchmaker. So I think that's one of the ways that you can stand out, is leveraging just Google search to do your research on what people are asking and jumping off from there, and then just asking your inner circle and see what's resonating with them.
I agree wholeheartedly, because it's amazing how much we take for granted because we're among our community. And then when you're talking to a regular person, like even recently, I hired someone and she's like, wow, like had no idea about matchmaking, had no idea about so many things. And I'm like, I need to be talking to these people more often, because then you said, to your point, you bring out something more fresh because they're asking the questions that you think are basic, but it's stuff that you take for granted because you've been at it for so long. So I think that's really great advice. um, Anything else you want to share that we haven't talked about with the folks that are listening about social media, speaking, all the things? You are such a wealth of information. I feel like you need to be doing this with me more often.
I love that. I think social media doesn't need to be intimidating. I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm getting a lot of, great I'm not trying to say my advice is great. I'm saying you're getting a lot of advice. You can determine if it's great or not. But you're getting a lot of advice and you might be thinking, I just don't feel like I am at liberty to action off of this advice, I would just say challenge yourself and start small. Maybe it's just like when I get into a content rut, I go to a notes tab in my phone and I just jot down things that I like at this point in time. And then I try to tie it to the type of content that I'm used to posting. Okay, so I was watching Drag Race the other night, and I post a lot of couples content. My husband is not the biggest Drag Race fan, so then I had the idea, well, maybe I'll film him reacting to some Drag Race slang or watching a video, like little things like that. It doesn't need to be this bulletproof idea to do well. The other thing that I know, and this is like a plug for Instagram right now, but Instagram launched trial reels, which are basically a way when you go to post a reel, which is one of the short form videos on Instagram. When you go to post that, you can actually hit trial reel. And what that does is it sends it out to everyone that doesn't follow you. Not everyone, but it sends it out to non-followers. So if you're like, oh, I don't know how my audience that already follows me or my friends or my family, I'm worried what they're going to think about me trying something new, you can hit trial reel and it'll show it to only non-followers. And if it starts doing well, then you can say, oh, I'm actually proud of this. Let me share it with my existing followers. So there's a lot of low barrier ways to get into the social game without having to feel like you're your own imposter on your own page. Because I get that way too. If I want to test a different, like this type of content, I wouldn't necessarily do on my page because I'm more focused on LGBTQ lifestyle with my husband, and my professional content isn't closely enough tied for me to maybe double down and try this type of content on my own personal handles. But there is still a lot of stuff that I could explore that's not in the professional space, that is just more fun. Maybe it's comedy skit type content. Maybe it's more content with my grandma, even though I know that does well already because she's a hoot. But there's just a lot of different ways that you can have a low stakes way to enter the social media space. So I think don't make it into a bigger deal than it needs to be. Have fun with it. Social media started to connect with friends and be fun. And yes, people have turned it into businesses, but that doesn't mean that should be your goal going into it. As a matchmaker, it would be a nice to have, it should be an outcome, but building a presence because you think you're adding value and because you enjoy it should be what drives you.
Mic drop right there. It's so true. And, I really don't have anything to add to that other than you do need to create content consistently, because when you own a business, they're going to Google you. And if they don't find anything, they're going to question not just going on your social, but like even like the videos and the things that pop up, LinkedIn, etc. They want to know what you're about before they actually engage with you. So I think, like it or not, we're going to have to do the social media, and let's not make it a drudgery. And by the way, you've converted me. I'm going back to Instagram. I'm going to spend some time in there. And now I'm going to start doing the trial. What is it?
Reels.
The reels.
Reels, yeah.
I'm not a fan of video, but I am going to embrace the video and just do it.
Yeah, because again, it's what's to lose. No one that follows you will see it. And if you're on social media, you really can't care what all the trolls say because most of them are bots anyways. They're not even real people. So don't let a bot tell you how you should feel about yourself. And the one thing I'll add, because you mentioned, it is important from a consistency standpoint. I think that's a big misperception too. Yes, you can grow based on frequency of how often you post. However, the algorithm still rewards you for consistency over frequency. If you're posting once a week on every Friday or bi-weekly or a monthly post, that still is rewarded. So don't feel like you need to be posting 6 times a day. Sure, you might see more growth if you're doing video content 6 times a day because some of those are more likely. There's a higher propensity for those to go viral. But as a whole, consistency is more important than frequency.
Wow. Okay. Good to know. How can people find you? You're such a wealth of information. I'm sure people are going to want to reach out and say, please help me with what I'm doing so I can be more strategic. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I love just hopping on a calls and shooting the SHIT and just figuring out how what might make sense for anyone. If people are interested, it's pkcreedon.com or LinkedIn. I would say it's just my name, PK Creedon, Creedon. I'd love to connect and just start a conversation, LinkedIn messaging, or you can submit a form on the website. And either way, we can be in touch via email or LinkedIn, etc. And honestly, on social channels too, but I don't check all of those messages often.
I'm sure you get a lot of messages too, so I don't blame you. With these looks, for anybody who's not looking at PK, he's gorgeous, so I'm sure he
Oh my
gets
God,
a lot
I need better lighting. I'm looking at myself. I'm so red right now. I am wearing a
great.
hashtag shirt though, which is on brand. I wore this for you.
Hashtag hashtag PK Creedon. Thank you so much for your time. I love you so much. And I know we will be in touch more often. Hopefully, you'll come on this show on a regular basis. But anyway, thank you so much. Wow. So many goals. I'm going to go back and listen to this episode and actually take notes.
Don't judge me. I don't know if I made sense. So you tell me.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Stay tuned, and we'll see you soon. All right. Well, I'm excited to have someone that I just fell in love with over this.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.